Hi, I'm Dr. Les Anderson. I'm a beef extension specialist with the University of Kentucky. This is the second module of the Controlling the Calving Season on the Beef Systems Analyzer video series. In the previous module, we discussed the economic and productivity reasons for switching from a year-round calving or long calving season to a controlled calving season. We discussed moving away from our normal, quote unquote, reproductive plan where cattlemen simply have cows, they buy a bull, they turn the bull in with the cows, and they wean and sell a calf at random. We discussed many tools that could be used to synchronize Estrous, both for natural service and AI, and we talked about culling methods that could be used to control the calving season. In this module, we're going to get in a little bit more detail on how to apply culling and reproductive management tools, in particular synchronization and natural service, to help control the breeding and calving season. How I want to approach this and subsequent modules is to discuss actual trials that were done on farms so that you can see real world examples. One of the first farms that I worked with was in Washington County, Kentucky. This farm had 60 females and they calved March through August. They pulled the bull on November the 1st, or bulls on November the 1st, and just because they didn't really have a necessary reason except that's the way that they'd always done it, they weaned all the calves on November the 1st, regardless of how old they were. And some of them, understand, were just 60, 70, 80 days old. The average weaning weight on those calves when they pulled them off, now this is not adjusted, this is just raw weaning weight, and some of them were, almost 10 months old, some of them were 3 months old. Their average weight was 443 pounds, and there were 42 total calves out of those 60 females that were supposed to calve. This is what this calving distribution looked like on the farm. This producer wanted to calve in March and April, but he kind of had a trickle-down theory of calving. So, in other words, as cows, the bull was left in with the cows, and as they didn't conceive here, they just kind of kept coming into heat a little bit later, got bred a little bit later, and that led to this 6-month-long calving season that seemed to have no end. This is what the guy's 6-month calving season looked like. So what I did here in this table, and this table is a fairly accurate depiction of what was going on. In this table, what I did was I took the middle of March and assumed that's halfway through March. And so from March 15th until November the 1st, there are 229 days. Then I simply subtracted 30 days, okay? From his data, calves born in March and April gained 2.5 pounds a day till weaning. Calves born in May and June gained about 2 pounds a day. Calves born in July and August gained about 1.5 pounds a day, and I did round those numbers. So then, to get an expected weaning weight, if I take that number times that number, this is what I would expect them to wean. There were 15 cows that actually calved in March, okay? And so the expected weaning weight times the number of calves will give you a total pounds expected to wean. So if I did this same math for all 6 months, so I multiply over and add down, we come up with 18,614 pounds of calf. The average weaning weight was 443 pounds, and the pounds of calf weaned per cow exposed was about 310 pounds. You think, well, this is not very accurate. This guy's just kind of making this stuff up. The whole point of this table and for the following tables is to show you the impact of shifting age. Okay, not genetics, not anything but controlling age. And so to do that, I just set this up so that every 30 days, okay, and we looked at the average daily gain, and then we just adjusted for genetics because there are multiple bulls in here. We just adjusted for genetics. And so the number, when they were, the average daily gain and the number of calves were actual, and honestly, this is within 200 pounds of what the guy's actual weaning weights were. So how do we control this? Well, the first thing we did was we understand that there's nothing I can do for July and August calving cows to make them calve in March, April, or May. And so we gave them trailer mycin. So in other words, we sold them. We replaced them with 4 young females that were going to calve in March. Everything else we fed MGA to for 7 days before we turned the bull out, and we'll describe what MGA is in just a little bit. But it's a feed additive that's used to induce heat in cows that have not yet begun to cycle. So we fed MGA again for 7 days, turned the bull out in these cows. So how did we do that? Well, the March calving cows, we really didn't do anything to, because we were turning the bull out on May 20th. Those cows calved in the first month. We didn't really have to worry about them, but we fed them anyway because it was easier on this trial because everything was managed in the same group. April calving cows also were not a problem. So the March and April calving cows were managed. Once they calved, they moved from the calving pasture to the breeding pasture. These cows were fed MGA from May 12th to May 19th. The bull was turned out on May the 20th. Everything worked pretty good for those cows. For these later calving cows, the May and Junes, what we did was we waited till the end of June. We ended up having most of the May calving cows calve before May 20th, but we waited till June 1st. And for these cows, okay, we fed them MGA for 7 days, beginning 21 days after that last cow calved. So it ended up being around the 10th of June, really, when we got started on that. And then June calving cows, same thing. About 3 weeks after the last cow calved in June, we fed that June calving group MGA for 7 days before we turned the bull out. Well, what happened? In the first year, we went from 15 cows calving in March to 35. We went from 42 total cows calving to 53, and we went from 18,614 pounds of calf wean to 27,856. Well, how in the world did we do that? Well, number one, we've got several more cows calving, right? We've got 11 more calves to sell. Also, we controlled the age of these calves. We had 15 cows that calved in March before we started the program. We bought 4, so that's 19 that we expected to calve in March. Because of the MGA treatment and advancing estrus in those anestrus cows, we were able to get 35 cows to calve in March the following year. So what we did was we doubled down. We did the exact same protocol on these cows. So these March and April calving cows got MGA from May 12th to May 19th. The bulls went out on May 20th. The May calving cows, these 5 May calving cows, they were turned out, or they were fed MGA for 7 days, starting 3 weeks after that last cow calved. And then when the MGA feeding was done, they were moved over to the breeding pasture with the other cows. So after 2 years, we went from 42 calves to 54. We went from 18,614 pounds to 29,874 pounds. We went from 310 pounds of calf wean per cow exposed to nearly 500. Okay, just basing it off of this added weight, so the 11,000 extra pounds, how much more revenue? All depends on what the market bears, right? When I did this calculation, it was $16,000 more revenue. That revenue was based upon more calves that weighed more. So how did we accomplish this? We fed those cows MGA, or we could put a CEDAR device in for 7 days before we turned the bull out. MGA is melangestrol acetate, and it's an orally active synthetic progestin that can be purchased from most feed companies. When fed at a rate of 0.5 milligram per head per day, it consistently tricks the cow into thinking that she's already begun to cycle. So that when you remove MGA from the feed, the cow sees the progestin going away, and it stimulates her to come into heat. The other thing that we have used, and you'll see some of this other data here in a second, is we've used the CEDAR device, which stands for Controlled Internal Drug Release. The CEDAR is a T-shaped plastic device that's coated in the actual hormone progesterone. And when inserted into the vagina of the cow, the body fluids soak up the progesterone and provide the natural hormone at natural levels. So it becomes a nearly perfect biological tool to use to induce estrus and anestrus females. Typically, we insert it in the vagina, and 7 days later, we pull the string, and estrus occurs 2 to 5 days after removal. You'll see some of the data that both of these methods are extremely effective in getting cows to rebreed very efficiently. About 2,000 cows in this data set, where we either fed MGA for 7 days before we turned the bull out, or simply turned the bull out on the same farms. So we would have 2 groups on each farm. Or we put a CEDAR device in cows for 7 days before we turned the bull out, and we had equal numbers of cows on each farm that just got natural service. Our pregnancy rates increased 8 to 10%, and the percent of cows that calved in the first 30 days went up about 30%. First question most people ask me is, well, how many bulls did you use? We kind of stacked the deck here in our favor. We didn't use more bulls, but we did use bulls that we were very confident that we were going to get excellent breeding results from. So we used experienced bulls, so that's a bull that's already seen at least 1 season's breeding experience. And we made sure that they all passed the BSE, and they were turned out with cows anywhere from 1 to 23 up to 1 to 42, and we saw no difference in the ability of those bulls to get those cows pregnant. Data from tens of thousands of synchronized cows, both with natural service and after AI, indicate that as long as you pay attention to your bull fertility and breeding soundness exams and watch your bulls, you will not overwork your bulls using this protocol. Just to get a little idea of what return on investment is, several years ago, we had 108 cows, where 54 of them were fed MGA and 54 of them were fed corn before we turned the bull out. We had an 80% preg rate in the corn group and a 95% preg rate in the MGA treated group. The MGA treated group averaged calving 17 days earlier than the corn group, and those calves weighed 40.4 more pounds at weaning. It cost us at that time about $3 a cow for MGA for 7 days. It costs a little bit more than that now. And we were able to wean about 7,000 more pounds. And again, you can use whatever multiplier you want and divide that by 54. And, typically, even in low market situations, we make at least $100 per cow. Particularly heading in, this is 2022, 2023, heading into this high market situation for the next 4 or 5 years, you're looking at $200 to $250 per cow exposed added revenue. After we'd done several of these trials, we decided, and we really thought about what was going on, and we figured out, really, we don't have to treat every cow. We just need to treat the cows that we expect are Estrous. And so what this trial and a couple others have done, well, several others, several thousand cows later, honestly. But this field trial started. We had 150 cows that calved from mid-February to mid-May. We inserted cedar devices in all cows that calved in April and May, and in all the 2-year-olds. And so a theory here was the cows that calved in February and March had plenty of time to recover and didn't need any assistance coming into heat early in the breeding season. But 2-year-olds and late calving cows needed assistance. We turned the bulls out for 70 days. What we found out was that we got 94% of our cows overall pregnant and 75% calved in the first 30 days. We had 17 of the 2-year-olds conceive in the first 30 days and 22 overall conceived, with 3 open, which we were very satisfied with. One thing then becomes, well, so really what we're using the cedar for is to advance calving and late calving cows, and that's really kind of where we've moved to, and this is the first of many of these trials that we've done. This table kind of illustrates what was done initially very clearly. So this producer was a February and March calving herd, and so April and May calvers were late calvers for this guy. He had these 4 cows that calved in April, and so what we did was 2 weeks after this last April cow calved, we put the cedar device in all of these for 7 days and turned them out with a bull. So we moved them from the calving pasture to the breeding pasture when we removed the cedar. You can see we advanced their calving date quite significantly the next year. Same thing for these June calving cows. About 2 weeks after this last cow calved, we put a cedar in for 7 days and removed it. And most of these cows calved about a month earlier. And what we found is that on average, about 80% of females respond to this treatment. These are late calving cows starting at 2 weeks after calving. 80% of them will respond, and they will calve on average between 30 and 40 days earlier than the year before. Just a larger trial with the same general design. The early calving cows we didn't do anything to, and so we got 94% of them pregnant and 77% calved over the first 30 days. Our late calving cows, so these are cows that calved in the last 45 days, about equal numbers and about equal performance. Our 2-year-olds, we had 68 of those. We had very good performance in those as well. And then what we termed our very late calving cows, which is actually as early as 7 days in some situations, but mainly 14 to 21 days after calving. So look at the performance of these 66 very late calving cows. It basically equalizes them or puts them on an equal basis to your late calving cows and your early calving cows. We do not recommend you go in any earlier than 14 days, but it will work as early as 14 days after calving. In a project to extend those data, in a project that we've run the last 5 years, we've had 177 mature cows that were minimum body condition score in 19 different locations, 2 to 4 weeks after calving, put a cedar device in, removed the cedar device, and we were able to get about 80% of them to calve about 30 days earlier. So as you can see, proper culling and synchronization, controlling estrus before natural service can be very effective methods to improve the reproductive performance of your cow herd and to control your calving season.